Right, so let's get to styling our button, which right now just looks like a plain old text link. So that's not what we want. Obviously, we want it to look like our nice rounded corner button. So we already hit preview in browser, so we don't ever need to do that again. Once you do real-time browser, real-time preview in browser, it opens our file up in our browser, and we'll continually update it as we develop. So we can just flip back over to Google Chrome and see our changes. If you have a dual monitor setup, you can just keep this open on a separate monitor and you just see it changing as you're making your changes. So flip back to Dreamweaver. We have our class of button, so that's what we want. So let's flip over to our main.css because we don't have to do any HTML editing. It's all CSS at this point. Let's go to line 52. Your line numbering may be different. Last curly brace, go to the end of it and hit return. And let's start editing for our button class. So hit .bu, and now all of a sudden you start seeing that Dreamweaver is popping up context specific. That's because it's reading the HTML page. It knows that there's a class called button in there. So it will start showing you the classes that match what you're typing. Well, button's what I want. I don't have to type anymore. I just hit return, and that's going to commit it. I go ahead and hit my curly brace, got my wrapper, and I'm ready to go. Click over here to our CSS designer, and there's our button right there, ready to go. Let's flip back to Photoshop. Let's take a look at our button. So we've got a rounded corner button here. If you click on the tool that creates it, which is the rounded rectangle tool, up here in the properties panel, it'll give you the radius that you set, or that the designer set, or that you set and just forgot what it was. It is 8 pixels, so that's what we're going to put into our CSS. And let's take a look at our border. Click on the effects. Let's double click on effects and let's take a look. So our stroke is 1 pixel. It's solid, and it's an orange color, specifically this hex value. Select it, copy it, hit cancel. Let's leave this open because we're going to need that color overlay. Flip back to Dreamweaver, and in button, let's start setting our button. Okay, so we have a border all around. I'm going to click on here and select pixels and click in there and hit 1. Our style is solid, and our color is that. Scroll down, start seeing some changes. You might start seeing some changes happening. There it is. There's your orange border. Still ugly, but let's go ahead and continue. What do you want to set? Let's set some padding next. So click on Layout. Let's go back to Photoshop and take a look at what our padding is. Oh, you know what? Let's do the color overlay first. What's our background color? Right there. Let's grab that. Cancel. Now we can cancel this. We don't need it anymore. Let's jump back to Dreamweaver. Let's set our background color. Background color. Paste. Done. Go back to Photoshop. All right. So we've got some padding around here. So let's not do that. Let's go to the marquee tool and let's take a look at what we got. About 13 pixels around, so that sounds good. Let's go back to Dreamweaver and let's add some padding. Go back to Layout, scroll down, let's put padding all around. We want that, and hit 13. And now you're starting to see this sucker take shape. Great, so now we've got padding around it. We're looking good. Let's round that corner. Remember what it was? It was an 8 pixel border radius. Let's go back to button over here. Our border radius is a setting under border, which is right here. Border radius works the same way in this interface, the way padding and margin works. Let's click this. We wanted 8 pixels all around. I'm going to lock it, and I'm going to choose 8. That's it. Done. Now I've got a rounded corner box. Looking good. Scroll down. And I've got my border radius of 8 pixels, so I'm good. Now I still have some issues here with with the font. So we're going to go ahead and make some updates to the font. So we've got our pseudo classes. I'm going to add a comment here that says pseudo link classes, so we know what we're doing. And let's spell pseudo right, that would help. And let's add our classes. So we're going to add all these pseudo classes to the button class. So we're going to start with button, colon, link, curly brace. Let's do our next one. Now, we could go easier here, but let's do this again. B, enter. Link is, what's the next one? Remember the mnemonic device, love, hate. Link first. What's the next one? It's visited, colon, visited, curly brace, done. Back down, B, return, colon, H for hover, curly brace, down, and the last one, love, hate, which is, whoop, I hit tab instead of return, which is active, the A for active. Great. So let's go ahead and set what we need to set in here. Let's go back to Photoshop. Our font is Arial 12 on 18. Now, if we put an 18 line height, that's going to screw some stuff up for our padding. So we're actually going to set our line height to 12, so it doesn't add any additional padding around the Learn More inside the button. And it's black. Okay, let's go set our link. Button is over here, button link, text. Our color is black. That's what we want. We notice we do not have an underline, so let's go to text decoration and choose none for underline. We're also centered in that button, so let's text align center. And our font family, which we have our sans serif font, which is Arial, so then we're using Gotham for that. So let's hit Gotham, and let's put our font size, which is 12 pixels. And we're going to set our line height to 12 pixels as well. And it did that again. Look at that. It's hit pixels. Scroll down. Now we're starting to look good. We don't have any hover state though. So in order for so let's flip over and take a look and see what we're dealing with on Chrome. Let's save what we got. You got to go back to source code in order for this to work. Let's go back to source code, then just flip back over to Google Chrome, and we see our updates here. I'm hovering over it. I'm not seeing anything happen. I'm clicking on it. I'm not seeing anything happen. Except that turning red, which is really not what I want. So let's set some hover states, let's set some active states, and let's set some visited states, because if you notice, it's now purple, and that's the default visited color. You'll see an overlay. We're gonna take care of that. It's overlaying the paragraph. Go back to Dreamweaver, back to the main.css, and let's set our visited. Well, a visited we want to be text. We want that to be black. That's all we have to set. The link styling is going to be inherited by all of these: visited, hover, and active. All we need to do is override the individual declarations that we want to change. In this case, our hover state is going to change. Visited state changed, but we want it to actually stay the same, so we keep it at zeros. So let's go to the hover state. It is a button, so why don't we just make the background a little darker. Let's go to background, click on the color, and we can bring it to our orange. Bring it down a little bit. And maybe that's it. That's good. I'm going to flip back to source code and, flip back to main.css, save that. Click back to source code and flip over to Chrome. And now we've got a style. So let's zoom in there. Now I just arbitrarily grabbed that orange. Usually not a good idea to do. We should be a little bit more specific about it, because if you notice, the border is slightly different. So why don't we just use the border color? So let's flip back to Dreamweaver. Let's go back to our main.css, and let's choose the color that we're using for the border, which is button. Let's just copy that border color right here. Copy it. Scroll down to our hover and just make the background color the border color. So in that case, when we hover over, we're going to end up having the same color as the border, and that's what we want. Active is when we click down or when we tap on it. So we want an active state. It's good user feedback. So we're going to do a background color as well. So let's go ahead and click. I'm going to copy that. I'm just going to paste it right here under active. It's the same color, but that's not really what I want to do. I want to make it a little darker. So let's go over here to our CSS designer, go to background, and let's go to color, and let's just drag this down a little darker, and maybe down like that. That's good. Let's save it, flip back to source code, flip back to Chrome, and let's see what it does. Down. There you go. Great. You see it's changing as I hover on it. That's good. Kind of hard to read with the learn more, so let's just let's make that text white. Flip back to Dreamweaver, go back to our style sheet. Let's go back to our active setting, and let's go to text, and let's choose white. Now it's going to make the color white. So now when we click down, we're going to have white as text with a darker background. Let's save that. Source code, back to Chrome. Right, that's what we want. Looking good. All right, let's address this issue here. This is our display setting, our display property. So what's going on here is that this this tag is actually, the padding is going over because we've removed all of our default padding and margin around this element, so it's smacking up against our paragraph. So a couple ways we can handle that. Let's give it a display property. Let's hover up back to our button style, and let's give it a display property of let's go to layout and display. Let's give it a display property of inline block. That will space it out correctly and leave it the size we want, although it's probably still too tight. So let's flip back to source code. Let's take a look. It's still too tight. So let's give it some additional margin up there. Flip back to Dreamweaver, and we've been using 15, so that might actually be good. So let's go back to layout, scroll down, and let's give this guy 15 pixels of padding, and let's scroll down, and that looks pretty good. Now we're smacking up against the bottom of this box because we set the height. That's a problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the height of this tile div, and we're just going to make it be whatever it needs to be to fit the content that's inside of it. And that setting is called auto. So let's just click inside the tile. I just put my cursor here on line 49, and let's go back to layout, and let's make height here auto. And now what you'll see is it lines up correctly, and that's exactly what we want to have look like. Let's save it, flip the source code, go to Chrome, and there's our Flamingo tile. Let's flip back to Photoshop, zoom out. This is what we wanted it to look like, and this is what it looks like now. All set.